Kia ora, I'm Phoenix, and today I've got a build guide for my level 91 Elementalist in Brandis softcore. She is using Kinetic Blast to stack ignites using Emberwake and Taming. This is my first attempt at a build guide, so please forgive any jump cuts, pop noises coming from my microphone and the New Zealand accent. This build is probably the strongest build I've ever made, and I'm pretty excited to show it off. What you're going to see in the background here is me running a pretty easy plateau map. Nothing too special on there, but a pack size and feeble. As you see me going in the background, you'll see that I'm definitely not a hardcore player. My flask management leaves a bit to be desired. This is also a little bit janky because it's the first time I've changed over to a PS setup. Originally I was using GMP chain, but I found that using GMP PS instead is a lot better for single target. If you'd like a bit more info on how PS works with KB, Mathel's just released a video, you should go check out his channel. Now you can see here most packs are cleared within one cast, whites and blues at any rate. If you come across a difficult rare or a boss or a beyond mob, something like that, we drop Frost Wall and then that will trigger KB a lot more. The core of the build is the Emberwake Ruby Ring. Normally, with ignites, you crit with fire damage and the ignites will all apply to the target and be tracked for their duration, but only the biggest hit will actually deal damage. With Emberwake, we deal 80% less burning damage, but we can stack up to 300 ignites at a time. The second ring that we use is the Taming Prismatic Ring, which grants 10% increased damage per status ailment on the enemy. If we can somehow get to 300 ignites, that would be the same as saying we get 3000% increased damage against that target. So the interaction between the two rings is rather obvious. In the past people have mainly used Incinerate or Ball Lightning with converted fire damage to get this to work. With the release of Ascendancies, the Elementalist has a node called Shaper of Desolation which grants Elemental Conflux on kill. Elemental Conflux gives us effectively 100% chance to ignite, and the damage that goes into those ignites will be taken from all sources, so we don't have to convert to fire damage, we just have to stack as much raw damage as possible. In order to apply as many ignites as possible in a short frame of time, I'm using Kinetic Blast. KB is linked to greater multiple projectiles, weapon elemental damage, life gain on hit, and pierce. I'm currently using a 5-linked lionized vision, which means I get the pierce gem for free. I can get another more multiplier in there by using hypothermia, since we have a 100% chance to chill from conflux. If you manage to get a hold of a 6-linked lionized vision, you'd probably pick up slower projectiles as the last link, which again is a more multiplier. It's worth noting that I leveled to mid-80s by using Tabula, but I've also used a 6-link Carcass Jack in the past. I've only switched over to the Lionize because I linked up the Carcass Jack for another build. As far as the rest of my skill setup goes, I'm trying to get as much flat elemental damage as I possibly can. In order to do that, I'm using Anger, Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder. Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder are linked to Curse on Hit with Assassin's Mark for the extra crit chance and power charge generation. Because I'm using a wand, I have to use Lightning Warp with faster casting and less duration. I've got a standard cast when damage taken and Mortal Call setup, which helps with survivability against porcupines and that sort of thing. In my helm, I'm using a cast when damage taken all lightning GMP knockback setup, which apart from barely contributing to keeping me safe, it also allows me to stack a crapload more ignites. Lastly, I've got a Frostwall Spell Echo, Ice Golem, and Veil Haste set up, just because I need the extra move speed and 30% on boots is not enough. I'm using Ice Golem with the Ascendancy Legion Primordial, which doubles the bonus from the Golem, so that's extra crit chance and accuracy. Accuracy is something that Wanders are always struggling for. The last Ascendancy I picked up was Beacon of Ruin for the free Prolif. As far as the passive tree goes, it's reasonably simple to get around it. Start off in the Witch, get out of there as soon as possible because we don't care about ES, we don't care about mana or anything like that. Travel up, pick up area of effect, travel up and get all of the important wand nodes, come down the right hand side of the tree to get the pierce chance. There's a total of 50% from this cluster. Move over to the left hand side of the tree, picking up Elemental Overload. Because of the interaction with Emberwake, we don't get crit multi effectively. Critical strikes do not deal extra damage, so picking up Elemental Overload is a no-brainer. Travel up, pick up the extra Elemental Wand nodes, pick up the extra burning damage nodes, travel down into the Templar for a tiny bit of damage penetration, and the extra skill, the extra area of effect. Pick up life where you can. I'm currently sitting at 4,500 life, which is probably a little bit low, but I've made it this far. Mapping with other people certainly helps a lot. While I'm in here, most of my jewels are based on increased life and ES on hit. It's pretty easy to get jewels for this build, purely because you don't need anything special, just what's going to give you more damage, what's going to give you ES on hit, and what's going to give you life. Mantra of Flames is a really important really important jewel for this build. It adds fire damage per buff on me. As you might have seen in that map I did just before, I was just hammering my flasks, and each of those flasks gives 1 to 2 extra buffs, which translates to extra damage. If you stand next to a Guardian or a dedicated support, your DPS can nearly double just from using Mantra of Flames. As far as the rest of my gear goes, it's nothing too special. The helm, I picked up the enchant for 50% chance for an extra KB explosion. That's pretty big. I just chaosed it into it, had a rubbish roll on it. Neck, focus on a bit of crit. Just you need to crit once every 8 seconds, it's not that important. Focus on Wed, life could be a lot better on that, that was pretty cheap. Boots, similar, stats, life, resist, 30% move speed. Belt, life, resists, Wed. Gloves, flat damage on the gloves is always nice. Attack speed you don't really care about with this build, you're just trying to load up on as much flat damage as possible. Accuracy is a big one. No, I don't have accuracy on the helm, that kind of sucks. Decree of War is probably about the best enchant you can get on gloves as well, because it spawns a copy of your weapon, and your weapon is doing a lot of DPS because that's all it's focused on. As you can see there, it's got some elemental rolls, it's got Wed on it, and I don't care what the other mods are. Doesn't matter about attack speed, doesn't matter about crit multi, you don't care about any of that whatsoever. Just raw damage. So I think I picked this wand up for 10 chaos maybe. It was, I think it's about 240 DPS total. Something I did forget to mention before is that we are using Eldritch Battery because KB has a really high mana cost, and I want to reserve 100% of my mana without picking up reservation nodes through Anger and the 2 Heralds. So having some of your items, in particular the shield with a bit of ES on it, is good. Gives you enough of a pool to sustain at least a few casts, and then the ES on hit from the jewels will take up the rest. If you're not using Eldritch Battery, you kind of have to use Blood Magic. It's not ideal, but it is how I leveled. I leveled using a Tabula. I wasn't using Hypothermia, I was using Blood Magic and Chain instead. And I didn't have the Pierce cluster at that time. I think Chain's good in terms of pack clear because it effectively auto-targets. Pierce on the other hand has much stronger single target DPS. I was running a Veil Power Siphon, Wed, Chain, random damage, but I decided I kind of preferred having the Immortal Call set up with Veil Haste instead. Getting enough attributes is kind of a big deal. For a long time I was using Careful Planning in order to change all of these int nodes in here to dex. Now, because I'm a high enough level, I just pick up the attributes on gear instead. In order to use the Lion Eyes, I had to pick up these 2 strength nodes in here because I didn't have strength on gear. you might have to play around a bit to make that one work. That's pretty much about all there is to say about the build. I will note that it does have a couple of troubles maintaining ES on single targets, but you just need to make sure you get enough frost walls down so that you can proc enough hits to get your ES back. I will leave you now with a white Gorge run. I know white Gorge runs are not exactly a good measure of a build's clearing ability, but I should have already shown by now that the build can clear perfectly well in about any map. This is just to prove that it's reasonably quick, and it could be a lot quicker if someone better than I was playing it. I did have to mute the sound on this track as I had some background music playing, so I'm just going to overlay it with Path of Exile music instead. Thanks for watching and enjoy.